The phone screen cut through the dim amber lighting of the patio, a sudden bright interruption on the pristine white tablecloth. I glanced down, expecting a work email or a spam notification. Instead, the name Sophia glared back. My stomach dropped, a violent physical lurch that had nothing to do with the expensive wine I'd been nursing. Sophia, Olivia's younger sister, my arch nemesis in combat boots. The message below her name was short, brutal, and terrifyingly vague. "I know what you're doing to me." I froze, my hand hovering over the device. Was this a threat? A warning? Olivia was sitting 3 feet away, discussing floral arrangements, completely unaware that her sister was apparently watching me, judging me, and preparing to detonate a grenade in the middle of this engagement dinner. The atmosphere on the patio was oppressive, the air clinging to my skin like a second layer of clothing. It was late August in the city, that heavy, humid window where even the most expensive linen suits start to wilt and lose their structure. We were gathered for Olivia's cousin's engagement party, an event that felt less like a celebration of love and more like a corporate merger of 2 very prominent, very beige families. The scent of charcoal from the heaters, mixed with the sharp tang of expensive perfume, and the low, constant hum of traffic from the street below, creating a sensory wall that trapped us all at the table. I looked at Olivia. She was beautiful, in that terrifying architectural way she always was. Her hair was pulled back so tight it looked painful, every strand accounted for, her posture rigid as she managed the conversation at our end of the table. She wasn't eating, she was directing, moving the salt and pepper shakers into perfect alignment, checking her watch, scanning the waiters to ensure the wine glasses never dipped below the halfway mark. This was the woman I had spent 3 years trying to be perfect for. The woman I had failed to be perfect for. Coming here was a mistake. I knew it the moment I walked in. I was the ex who had been graciously invited because we were still friends, which in Olivia's language meant I was a loose end she was trying to tie up neatly. I felt like an intruder, a smudge on a perfectly polished lens. I sat there, crumbling a bread roll I had no intention of eating, feeling the phantom weight of expectations I no longer had to meet, yet somehow still felt crushed by. The clinking of silver against china sounded aggressive, a rhythmic reminder that I didn't belong here anymore. But the real source of the tension wasn't Olivia. Olivia was predictable. Olivia was a schedule I could never keep. The real variable, the dangerous element in the equation, was Sophia. Sophia, the younger sister, the black sheep, the one who had looked at me across the Thanksgiving table 4 years ago and decided instantly and irrevocably that she hated my guts. For years, our relationship had been a series of cold wars fought with eye rolls, heavy sighs, and sarcasm sharp enough to draw blood. She was the critic in the back row of my life, constantly pointing out that my performance was lacking. When Olivia and I broke up, Sophia hadn't said a word. She just looked at me with those dark, unreadable eyes, a look that said, "Finally, what took you so long?" I checked the time. Sophia was late. Of course she was late. Olivia was vibrating with suppressed irritation about it, her knuckles white as she gripped the stem of her wine glass. "She does this on purpose," Olivia murmured to her mother, her voice tight. "She knows the schedule." I took a sip of water, trying to wash down the dry lump of anxiety in my throat. I didn't want to see Sophia. I didn't want to deal with the inevitable once-over, the way her gaze would dismantle my outfit, my career, and my entire existence in 3 seconds flat. Sophia had this way of making me feel like I was playing a character, like she was the only one who could see the zipper on the back of the costume. She was chaos to Olivia's order, a wildfire to Olivia's controlled burn, and I was just the flammable material caught in between. The noise of the party swelled around us, polite laughter, the clink of silver on china, the meaningless pleasantries of people who had known each other since prep school. It was a suffocating ecosystem of unspoken rules, and I was currently breaking the biggest one just by being here and being uncomfortable. I adjusted my napkin, checked my phone again, and tried to regulate my breathing. The text message burned in my pocket. I know what you're doing to me. I looked at the empty chair across from me. Sophia's chair. It was the only empty spot at the long rectangular table, a gap in the formation. It felt like the eye of a storm, a vacuum waiting to be filled. The air around the table seemed to shift, the humidity breaking for just a second as a breeze rolled in off the street. The shift in the room was palpable before I even saw her. It wasn't a sound, but a sudden magnetic realignment of the atmosphere, as if the air pressure had dropped in anticipation of a storm. The polite, uniform murmur of the party faltered, just for a beat, and that silence was her entrance music. I turned my head, following the collective gaze of the table, and there she was, the variable. If the rest of the party was a study in beige, cream, and soft, non-threatening pastels, Sophia was an ink spill on a pristine page. She wasn't wearing a dress. She was wearing a suit, sharp, tailored, and black as a deep ocean trench. It was severe, architectural, and completely at odds with the garden party aesthetic Olivia had spent months curating. It was a visual declaration of war, or at the very least, a refusal to sign the peace treaty. She didn't blend in. She carved through the space. I remembered Sophia as a teenager, a sullen, eye-rolling presence in the background of my relationship with her sister, always wearing oversized hoodies and a scowl. That girl was gone. In her place was someone sharper, harder, and infinitely more dangerous. Her hair was cut short, exposing the long, elegant line of her neck, and her posture was loose, predatory. Olivia moved like she was holding her breath. Sophia moved like she owned the oxygen. She reached our table, and the temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. Olivia didn't look up from her salad, her jaw tightening so hard I thought a tooth might crack. "You're late," Olivia said to the tablecloth. "And you're predictable," Sophia replied. Her voice was lower than I remembered, a rich, scratchy contralto that vibrated in the hollow of my chest. She didn't offer an excuse. She didn't apologize. She just pulled out the empty chair, the one directly across from me, and finally looked at me. The breath stalled in my lungs. Her eyes were dark, intelligent, and currently locked onto mine with the intensity of a sniper scope. There was no warmth there, but there was recognition. And something else. A challenge? A threat? It was impossible to read, and that terrified me. "You came," she said. It wasn't a question. It was an accusation wrapped in a greeting. "I was invited," I managed to say, my voice sounding thin and defensive to my own ears. I stood up, halfway, offering my hand because it was the polite, civilized thing to do, and I was clinging to politeness like a life raft. Sophia looked at my hand for a second, a small, humorless smile playing on her lips. Then she took it. Her skin was cool, her grip surprisingly firm. But instead of the quick, perfunctory shake I expected, the kind you give your sister's ex whom you despise, she held on. She held my hand for 3 seconds too long, her thumb pressed deliberately against the back of my knuckles, a small, grounding pressure that felt less like a handshake and more like she was taking my pulse. "Brave," she murmured, just loud enough for me to hear. "Or stupid. The line is thin with you." She released me, and I sank back into my chair, my hand tingling where she'd touched it. The physical contact had been brief, but it left a residue, a static charge that made the hair on my arms stand up. She sat down, and a wave of her scent washed over the table, obliterating the smell of the floral centerpieces. It wasn't flowery or sweet. It was wood smoke and vetiver, something dark and complex that smelled like a forest after a rainstorm. It was an invasive scent, claiming the territory between us, filling my personal space until every breath I took tasted like her. The waiter arrived to pour her wine, and Sophia leaned back, one arm draped over the back of her chair, opening her chest to the room while everyone else was hunched over their plates. She took a sip of the red wine, her eyes never leaving my face. She was examining me, dismantling me, looking for the cracks. I thought about the phone in my pocket. "I know what you're doing to me." Looking at her now, seeing the sharp intelligence in her gaze and the way she dominated the space without saying a word, I realized I had no idea what she meant. I wasn't doing anything to her. But sitting there, trapped in her crosshairs, smelling the wood smoke and seeing the challenge in her dark eyes, I felt like the accused waiting for the verdict. The dinner had barely started, and I was already losing. The arrival of the entrees provided a momentary distraction. Olivia immediately seized the silence, launching into a monologue about the wedding seating chart, her voice a steady, rhythmic drone. I nodded at the appropriate intervals, cutting my fish with surgical precision, trying to make myself as small and agreeable as possible. I was performing the role of the good ex, the supportive friend who didn't cause ripples. But ripples were Sophia's specialty. While Olivia dissected the merits of round versus rectangular tables, Sophia dissected me. She hadn't touched her food. Her wine glass was the only thing moving, lifting to her lips in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. Every time I looked up, her eyes were waiting for me, dark and amused, peeling back the layers of my politeness to find the panic underneath. So, Sophia's voice cut through Olivia's description of tablecloth thread counts like a serrated knife. The table went quiet. Olivia stopped mid-sentence, looking annoyed at the interruption. Sophia didn't look at her sister. She kept her gaze locked on me. Still working at that boutique agency? The one that designs logos for eco-friendly dog toys. It was a trap. I knew it was a trap. I'm still there, I said, keeping my voice even. We actually just landed a major contract with a sustainable energy firm. It's exciting work. Exciting, Sophia repeated, tasting the word and finding it sour. Is that the word? Because last time I saw you, you said it was stable. You said it was sensible. I don't remember exciting ever making the list. I tightened my grip on my fork. Priorities change, Sophia. Do they? She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand. The distance between us felt non-existent, despite the expanse of white linen separating us. Or do you just change the words to fit the audience? You always were good at adapting. A chameleon in beige. Sophia, Olivia warned, her voice tight. Don't start. I'm just making conversation, Sophia said innocently, though her eyes were dancing with malice. We haven't caught up in ages. I'm curious about her life. The real one, not the press release she sends out in Christmas cards. She turned back to me. Are you seeing anyone? Or are you still mourning the great dynastic collapse of 3 years ago? My face heated. The table felt suddenly very small, the air thin. I'm dating, I lied. Or I half lied. I went on dates. They just never went anywhere because I was emotionally unavailable and perpetually exhausted. Dating, Sophia echoed. Anyone real? Anyone who makes you lose sleep? Or just more sensible choices? Under the table, something bumped my ankle. I flinched, my knee hitting the underside of the table with a dull thud. I looked at Sophia sharply. Her expression hadn't changed, but her foot was there, pressing against the side of my calf. It wasn't a kick. A kick would have been aggressive. This was worse. It was a lingering, deliberate pressure, the heavy leather of her boot resting against my sheer tights. It was an invasion of territory, a physical breach of the demilitarized zone. I should have moved my leg. I should have pulled back. But I was frozen, paralyzed by the sheer audacity of it. Above the table, she was interrogating me. Below it, she was touching me. The contrast short-circuited my brain. I'm happy, I said, the words sounding hollow even to me. My life is good. Calm. Sophia laughed. It was a low, dry sound. Calm. God, you sound like a patient under sedation. Is that what you want? To be calm? The pressure on my leg increased slightly, a silent punctuation to her question. You used to have a spark. I remember it. You used to argue back. Now you just sit there and eat your fish and nod at the right times. It's tragic, really. I'm polite, I snapped, the mask slipping just an inch. It's a social skill. You should try it. I prefer honesty, she countered, her voice dropping an octave, becoming intimate in the crowded room. I prefer knowing what's actually happening beneath the surface. You're not happy. You're trembling. I'm not, I said, but my voice lacked conviction. You haven't taken a breath in 45 seconds, she murmured, taking a sip of wine. I opened my mouth to defend myself, to tell her to go to hell, to pull my leg away from the heat of her boot. But before I could speak, a vibration buzzed against the hard mahogany of the table. It was a harsh, mechanical sound that cut through the tension like a referee's whistle. We both looked down. My phone screen had lit up again. I didn't want to look. Looking felt like admitting defeat, like acknowledging the invisible electronic leash she had just snapped around my neck. But the vibration against the mahogany was a physical itch I couldn't ignore, a persistent, buzzing demand for attention. I slid my hand into my lap, shielding the screen with the heavy edge of the tablecloth, and tilted the phone just enough to catch the ambient light. The message was still there, glowing in the artificial brightness of the display, burning itself into my retinas. I know what you're doing to me. 7 words, 23 letters. A complete grammatical sentence that made absolutely no sense and yet felt like a guillotine blade hovering inches above my skin. I looked up, moving slowly, terrified of what I would find. Sophia was watching me. She had her wine glass raised to her lips, the dark red liquid obscuring her mouth, but her eyes were fully visible over the rim. They were unblinking, unflinching. There was no anger in them, which was almost more terrifying. There was just a heavy, suffocating awareness. She took a slow sip, her throat moving as she swallowed, and she didn't look away. She knew I had read it. She was waiting for the fallout. The air in the room seemed to vanish. My palms were suddenly slick with sweat, dampening the linen napkin in my lap. My pulse hammered in my ears, a frantic rhythm that drowned out the conversation. I felt lightheaded, the edges of my vision blurring into a soft, fuzzy gray. The scent of her perfume seemed to intensify, filling the sudden silence between us. I was trapped. Trapped by the table, trapped by the social contract of the engagement party, trapped by the terrifying woman sitting across from me, who seemed to be reading my mind and finding it boring. Can you pass the salt? The voice came from my left. It was Olivia. Normal, practical, oblivious Olivia. The sound snapped the tension like a dry twig stepped on in a quiet forest. The world rushed back in. The clatter of forks, the laughter from the other end of the table, the humidity. I blinked, disoriented, turning to look at my ex-girlfriend. She was pointing to the small crystal shaker near my elbow, her expression mildly impatient. She had no idea. She had no idea that her sister was currently dismantling my psyche via text message while playing footsie with me under the table. The salt, I repeated, my voice sounding like it was coming from underwater. I grabbed the shaker. My hand was shaking so badly the salt inside hissed against the glass walls. I slid it across the tablecloth, watching it skid to a halt near her plate. Thanks, Olivia said, already turning back to her conversation about floral arrangements. I couldn't stay here. I needed air. I needed distance. I needed to stare at a bathroom mirror and remind myself of my own name before I dissolved completely. Excuse me, I mumbled, pushing my chair back. The legs scraped against the patio stones, a harsh sound that made Sophia's eyes narrow slightly. I need to... restroom. It wasn't a coherent sentence, but it was enough. I stood up, my legs feeling like jelly, unsteady and unreliable. I didn't look at Sophia again. I couldn't. If I looked at her, I wouldn't be able to leave. I turned and walked toward the restaurant's interior, navigating the maze of tables, feeling her gaze burning into my back like a laser sight. I was retreating. I was fleeing the scene of the crime, even though I still didn't know what the crime was. The hallway to the restrooms looked like a sanctuary, a dark tunnel away from the lights. But as I walked toward it, I had the sinking feeling I was just walking deeper into the trap. The bathroom offered a sterile, fluorescent reprieve from the sensory assault of the patio. I leaned over the sink, gripping the cold porcelain until my knuckles turned white, staring at my reflection. The mirror showed a woman on the verge of fracturing, eyes wide, a flush creeping up her neck that had nothing to do with the humidity. I turned on the tap, letting the icy water run over my pulse points, counting backward from 10. I needed a strategy, a defense. If Sophia was going to accuse me of sabotaging Olivia's night, I needed a rebuttal that didn't sound like a guilty plea. I rehearsed sentences in my head, testing their weight. I'm just here for the cake. I'm leaving in 10 minutes. You're projecting. None of them sounded convincing. They sounded like lies. I dried my hands on a paper towel, took one last deep breath that did nothing to settle the frantic rhythm of my heart, and pushed open the door. I expected the empty corridor, a clear path back to the safety of the crowd and the beige conversation. Instead, I found a blockade. Sophia was waiting. She was leaning against the wall opposite the bathroom door, arms crossed over that sharp black suit, one leg bent with the heel of her boot resting against the plaster. She looked like a sentry at the gates, or perhaps the gatekeeper to something much more complicated. The hallway was narrow, dimly lit by sconces that cast long, dramatic shadows across her face, emphasizing the sharp angles of her jaw. She didn't look surprised to see me. She looked like she'd been counting the seconds, timing my breakdown with a stopwatch. "You can't just send texts like that," I said. It rushed out of me before I could stop it, the defensive anger overriding the fear. "It's psychotic, Sophia. We're at a family engagement party. Olivia is sitting right there talking about centerpieces. If you have a problem with me being here, just say it. Don't play these cryptic mind games because I am not in the mood to decode your—" She pushed off the wall. It was a fluid, predatory shift that cut off my sentence like a physical hand over my mouth. She took a step toward me, effectively shrinking the world down to the 3 feet of patterned carpet between us. The air in the hallway suddenly thickened, charged with a static electricity that made the hair on my arms stand up. She didn't look angry. She looked focused, intensely, terrifyingly focused. "You think I have a problem with you being here?" she asked, her voice low, a rich rumble that seemed to vibrate in the floorboards. "You said you know what I'm doing to you," I hissed, refusing to back down, even though every instinct I had screamed, "Run." "You think I'm trying to mess with Olivia? You think I'm manipulating the situation to—" "I didn't say Olivia," she interrupted. Her eyes dropped to my mouth, lingered there for a heartbeat, then dragged back up to my eyes. The movement was slow, deliberate, and heavy. "I said I know what you're doing to me." I blinked. The anger stalled, replaced by a sudden, disorienting confusion that felt like vertigo. "What?" "You're distracting me," she said. It wasn't an accusation anymore. It was a confession, delivered with the weight of a verdict. I'm trying to be the supportive sister. I'm trying to listen to speeches about mortgages and the future of the family lineage, and I can't focus on a single damn thing because you're sitting across from me, looking like a deer in headlights, wearing that dress that fits you entirely too well. My mouth fell open slightly. The breath left my lungs. You hate me," Sophia laughed. It was a soft, breathy sound that ghosted across my skin, stripping away the last of my defenses. She took another step. We were dangerously close now, the intimacy distance collapsing to 0. I could smell the wood smoke perfume again, feel the heat radiating from her suit jacket. "Is that what you think?" She shook her head, a tiny, almost imperceptible movement. "I've never hated you. I was frustrated. Do you know how annoying it is to watch someone try so hard to be boring when they're obviously not?" "I'm not boring," I whispered, the protest weak. "No," she agreed. She reached out, her hand hovering near my arm before dropping to her side, a restrained gesture that felt louder than a touch. "You're just oblivious. It's your worst quality. You think I've been glaring at you for 3 years because I despise you? I've been glaring at you because you were with the wrong sister, and you were too polite to notice." The world tilted on its axis. I struggled. "That's insane." "Is it?" She leaned in, her face inches from mine. "Tell me you don't feel this, the static. Tell me you haven't been waiting for me to corner you all night." I opened my mouth to answer, to deny it, or maybe to admit it, when a roar of applause erupted from the patio, shattering the moment. The engagement toast. The spell broke. Sophia stepped back, the mask of cool detachment sliding back into place, but her eyes stayed hot. "Saved by the applause," she murmured. "We're not done." The patio had transformed. The rigid formality of dinner dissolved into the sloppy, chaotic warmth of an open bar. Ties were loosened, laughter grew louder, and the string quartet was replaced by a DJ thumping bass into the floorboards. I tried to slip back to my seat, to disappear into the beige background, but Olivia intercepted us. She was flushed, clutching a clipboard like a shield. "Everyone is dancing," she announced, less an observation, more a command. She looked at me, then at Sophia, calculating the risk. "Just try not to kill each other for 3 minutes. It's for the videographer." Olivia's hand was on my back, propelling me forward before I could protest. Sophia didn't resist. She stepped into the space with that predatory grace, turning to face me as the crowd swallowed us. We were pushed together by the crush of bodies, a forced proximity that made the hallway encounter feel like a dress rehearsal. I hesitated, hands hovering awkwardly. Sophia didn't. She stepped in, closing the gap, and placed her hand on my waist. It wasn't the aggressive poke of a boot or a sharp grip. It was heavy, solid. Her palm was warm through my dress, fingers splaying out to claim the territory of my hip. It was a grounding weight that anchored me even as my head started to spin. "Relax," she murmured, her voice vibrating against my chest. "You're stiff as a board. Olivia's not grading you anymore." "I'm not stiff," I lied, voice tight. "I'm attentive." "You're terrified," she corrected. She pulled me closer, just a fraction, but it changed everything. Suddenly, we weren't just two people standing near each other. We were a closed circuit. The noise of the party faded into meaningless white noise against the high-definition reality of her body moving against mine. I looked up. The patio lights reflected in her dark eyes, softening the sharp angles of her face. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking at my mouth. "You were right," she said softly, her lips brushing my ear as she leaned in. The sensation of her breath against the sensitive skin of my neck sent a shiver racing down my spine, a physical short circuit. About the text. I shouldn't have sent it. I swallowed hard. "Because it was rude?" "Because it was incomplete," she whispered. Her hand on my waist tightened, her thumb tracing a slow, deliberate arc against my side. "I should have said, 'I know what you're doing to me, and I'm furious that I like it.'" My breath hitched. It was an insult wrapped in velvet, a compliment that felt like a challenge. "You think I'm doing this on purpose?" "I think you have no idea what you're doing," she murmured, pulling back just enough to catch my gaze. "Which makes it worse. If you were trying to seduce me, I could handle it. I could dismantle that. But this accidental competence, it's infuriating." "I'm not trying to be competent," I managed, my voice dropping to match hers. "I'm just trying to survive your sister's party." "Forget my sister," she commanded, low and rough. "She's not here right now. It's just us. And the fact that you're wearing a perfume that's making it very difficult for me to remember why I'm supposed to be the villain in this story?" My heart hammered against my ribs. "I never thought you were the villain," I admitted, the truth slipping out. "I just thought you were impenetrable." Sophia laughed, a low sound I felt in my own chest. "Honey," she drawled, "I've been an open book for 3 years. You were just reading the wrong genre." The song ended, but neither of us moved. Her hand stayed on my waist, heavy and possessive. My hand was still resting on her shoulder, fingers curled into her suit jacket. For a terrifying, exhilarating moment, I thought she was going to kiss me right there, in front of the videographer and the cousins. Then the DJ switched tracks, a jarring pop song shattering the bubble. Olivia's voice cut through, organizing a group photo. Sophia stepped back, the loss of her touch leaving me suddenly cold. But the look she gave me before turning away, a dark, promising smirk, told me the negotiation definitely wasn't over yet. It had simply moved to a dangerous new phase. We didn't go home. Going home would have meant separating. breaking the fragile truce that had established itself between us on the dance floor, and neither of us was willing to sever that connection just yet. Instead, we ended up 3 blocks away, escaping the suffocating orbit of the engagement party for the anonymous sanctuary of a 24-hour diner. It was a jarring transition, moving from the curated, beige elegance of the patio to the harsh, flickering neon reality of late-night city life. But it felt like breathing pure oxygen after holding my breath for 3 hours. The cafe was a small, glass-fronted box that smelled aggressively of roasted beans and lemon cleaner. It was the kind of place that existed outside of time, populated by students, insomniacs, and people running away from their own lives. We slid into a red vinyl booth in the back, the material squeaking beneath us, sitting opposite each other across a chipped laminate table. The space between us was smaller here, more intimate than the formal dining table. There were no centerpieces to hide behind, no family politics to navigate, just the hum of the refrigerator and the buzzing of a blue neon sign that cast a surreal, cinematic glow across Sophia's face. She ordered a black coffee, unapologetic and intense, even at midnight. I ordered a chamomile tea because I was still trying to lower my heart rate from a sprint to a jog. Chamomile, Sophia teased, her voice dropping that low, scratchy register that seemed to bypass my ears and resonate directly in my spine. She watched me unwrap the tea bag, her eyes dark and amused. You really are committed to the sensible brand, aren't you? Some of us have work in the morning, I countered, though the bite was gone from my tone. It felt less like an argument and more like a secret language we were inventing in real time. And some of us enjoy not vibrating through the ceiling. I like the vibration, she murmured, leaning forward, resting her elbows on the table. The movement brought her face into the pool of light, highlighting the sharp curve of her cheekbone and the dark smudge of eyeliner that made her look dangerous. It keeps things interesting, unlike Olivia's spreadsheets. The name hung in the air for a second, but it didn't feel like a weapon anymore. It felt like a bridge. We were finally talking about the elephant in the room, but from a new angle. Olivia wasn't the prize we were fighting over. She was simply the reason we were sitting here. I wasn't trying to be boring, I admitted, staring into the swirling dark water of my tea. I was intimidated. You have this fire. You walk into a room and burn all the oxygen. I felt like if I spoke up, I'd just fan the flames. Sophia went quiet. I looked up to find her studying me, the mockery replaced by something softer, something almost vulnerable. She reached across the small table. Her hand didn't grab mine, it just landed near it, her pinky finger brushing against my wrist. The contact was electric, a live wire touching a conductor. I wasn't burning the oxygen, she said softly. I was trying to get your attention. I was jealous, you know? Not of Olivia having you, but of your composure. You stood there in the middle of our chaotic, loud, messy family, and you were so still. I wanted to crack you open just to see if you actually bled. You did a good job, I whispered. My hand turned, almost of its own accord, until my fingers brushed against her palm. Her skin was warm, the friction sending a jolt straight to my chest. I think I'm bleeding now. Good, she said, and her fingers curled around mine, a slow, deliberate claiming. The antagonism that had defined us for years evaporated, revealing the raw attraction that had been hiding underneath it all along. Because I'm done fighting. I think I'd much rather surrender. We stepped out of the cafe and into a city that felt entirely different. The storm had finally broken while we were inside, washing away the oppressive humidity and leaving the streets slick, dark, and smelling of wet asphalt. The air was cool now, sharp against my flushed skin, a welcome contrast to the feverish heat that had been building between us in that red vinyl booth. It felt like the city itself had exhaled, releasing all the pressure that had been building up since the party began. We walked toward my car in silence, but the quality of the silence had shifted. It wasn't the tense, jagged quiet of the dinner table. It was a companionable, vibrating silence, shared between two people who have just realized a secret that changes the world. Her boots clicked against the wet pavement, a steady, grounding rhythm matching the erratic thumping of my heart. We weren't touching. There was a careful foot of distance between us. But I could feel her presence at my shoulder like a gravitational field, a pull I couldn't step out of. My car was parked under a flickering street lamp 3 blocks down, the amber light reflecting off the puddles. I unlocked the doors, the chirp of the alarm sounding jarringly loud. This was the checkpoint. Logic dictated I should get in, drive away, and pretend this night was just a strange anomaly. I stood by the driver's door, keys digging into my palm, hesitating. Sophia didn't move to her own car. She leaned against my passenger door, crossing her arms, the neon light catching the sharp angle of her jaw. "You're thinking too loud," she said, her voice cutting through the ambient city hum. "I can practically hear the gears grinding. You're trying to talk yourself out of this." "I'm trying to be rational," I countered, though the fight had drained out of me. "Sophia, this is complicated. You're Olivia's sister. We have a history of hating each other. This isn't just a bad idea, it's a catastrophic one." "The history was a lie," she said, pushing off the car. "We didn't hate each other. We were terrified of each other. There's a difference." She looked down at me, eyes dark and unreadable. "And as for the complication, I don't care about the rules. I care about the static. You feel it, don't you? It's not going away just because you drive home." She was right. The static was deafening. It drowned out the city traffic, the distant sirens. She didn't step closer this time. She waited. I was the one who moved, closing the last few inches between us. I reached out, hands finding her waist. It started as a goodbye hug, a polite, obligatory gesture, but it mutated instantly upon contact. I wrapped my arms around her, burying my face in the curve of her neck. It wasn't a polite embrace. It was a collision. I held on desperately, breathing her in, that familiar scent filling my lungs, overriding every logical thought I had left. Her grip tightened, hands pressing flat against my back, pulling me flush against her. I felt the frantic beat of her heart against my chest, proving she wasn't as calm as she pretended. We stood there under the flickering light, two enemies who had suddenly realized they were fighting on the same side. She pulled back just enough to rest her forehead against mine. Our breaths mingled in the small, charged space between us. I could feel the heat radiating from her suit jacket, burning through the layers of my clothes. "I'm terrified," I whispered, the confession scraping my throat. "Good," she murmured, her nose brushing against mine. "Fear means you're paying attention." Standing there, wrapped in the arms of the woman I was supposed to despise, I realized that my loyalty to Olivia was just a ghost story. It was a memory of a duty, a phantom limb I had been dragging around for years out of habit. But this, the heat, the scent of her, the terrifying acceleration of my heart, this was flesh and blood. It was real. "I don't want to let go," I admitted. "Then don't," she whispered. "Stop fighting the current. Just let it take us." Waking up in my own apartment the next morning felt like surfacing from deep water. The familiar cracks in the ceiling were the same, the hum of the refrigerator was the same, but the internal landscape of my life had completely rearranged itself overnight. The sunlight hitting the duvet felt sharper, more demanding. I lay there for a long time, staring at dust motes dancing in the air, taking inventory. My skin still felt warm, a lingering echo of the heat from standing outside my car with Sophia. I knew I should feel guilty. I was the ex, she was the sister. But the memory of her breath against my neck made it impossible to feel regret. My phone buzzed on the nightstand, the sound loud in the quiet room. I reached for it, my fingers fumbling slightly. It wasn't a threat this time. It was Sophia. "I'm drinking chamomile tea. It tastes like wet hay. You owe me a real drink to make up for this indignity." I smiled, burying my face in the pillow. It was a callback, an inside joke established in the span of an hour, a secret language that excluded everyone else. It was intimate in a way that terrified me. I had to meet Olivia at noon. It was a scheduled obligation, the exchange of a pashmina she'd left in my car weeks ago. But now it felt like walking into a courtroom. We met at a neutral coffee shop downtown, a place with polished concrete floors and acoustic indie pop playing softly in the background. Olivia was already there, sitting with perfect posture, typing furiously on her phone. She looked impeccable, composed, and entirely safe. "You're late," she said, without looking up, though her tone was mild. She closed her laptop as I sat down. "The party was a disaster, wasn't it? I'm so sorry about Sophia. She was in rare form last night." "She was fine," I said, the lie tasting strange on my tongue. "We actually talked." Olivia paused, her coffee cup halfway to her lips. She looked at me, really looked at me, searching for the crack in the veneer. "You talked? To Sophia? Usually you two can't be in the same zip code without a diplomatic incident." "I think we just misunderstood each other," I said carefully. I watched Olivia's face, the familiar furrow of her brow, the way she pursed her lips when she was processing data. For 3 years, that expression had governed my emotional state. If Olivia was worried, I was stressed. If Olivia was happy, I was relieved. But now, I felt nothing. No urge to soothe her, no desperate need to explain myself. The cord had been cut. I wasn't looking for her approval anymore because I had found something far more compelling, her sister's challenge. "You seem different," Olivia observed, narrowing her eyes. "Did you change your hair? You look less tight." "I slept well," I lied again. "Well, good," she sighed, checking her watch. "I have to run. Mother is manic about the florist." She took the pashmina, gave my hand a brief, perfunctory squeeze, a gesture of habit, not affection, and left. I sat there for 20 minutes after she was gone, watching the steam rise from my cup. I realized that my loyalty to Olivia had been a ghost I was haunting myself with. She didn't own me. She didn't even really know me. She knew the version of me that tried to be beige, the version that fit into her schedule. Sophia had seen the real version in 10 seconds of silence. I pulled out my phone. The guilt was still there, sitting heavy in my chest, telling me I was crossing a line that couldn't be uncrossed. I was the ex. She was the sister. It was messy, it was forbidden, and it was undeniably wrong by every social metric. But then I remembered the heat of Sophia's hand on my waist, the smell of wood smoke, the way she had looked at me like I was a puzzle she was desperate to solve. The safe choice was to delete her number and go back to being sensible. I opened the message thread. My thumbs hovered over the glass, trembling slightly. Then I typed, "The tea is a penance for your bad attitude. But if you want a real drink, pick me up at 8. I'm done being sensible." I hit send before I could talk myself out of it. The swooping sensation in my stomach wasn't fear anymore. It was the thrill of free fall. The phone buzzes again on the passenger seat, vibrating against the leather. I pick it up, expecting a confirmation, a time, a location. Instead, it's a photo. It's a picture of the empty chair opposite her at a different cafe, the sunlight hitting the empty space where I should be. The caption is short, sharp, and stripped of all pretense. "The view is worse without you." I smile, shifting the car into gear. Sometimes the person you think is the villain is just the only one brave enough to challenge you to write a better story. If you've ever found love where you least expected it, subscribe to hear what happens next.